Howdy, 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 everybody. This is Ryan Acidheads Murphy coming to you with another how-to video on game development. This is to accompany the book I have been writing. I did a little section on different kinds of skills you can make, and one of the examples I used was I talked about how you can make passive map skills and an alignment system in RPG Maker MV. You can use the exact same method in any kind of game development software. Do it completely from scratch. This is simply how you would utilize RPG Maker's built-in functions in order to do these sorts of skills. An alignment system, you can use it as a sanity system, a corruption system. It's any kind of system like alignment that you need a sliding scale of some kind. Alright, so we're going to start with passive map skills. So if you don't know what passive map skills are within game development, or this is at least my jargon, whether I made it up or not, for different kinds of skills. So active map skills are ones that you would use a skill from, let's say, a freezing spell. This is one of my testing maps in a game I've been working on. So let's say there would be a way to get up here. Normally you can't pass the water, but if I put in, say, a freezing spell, what you'd do for something like that is you'd have some sort of an image icon. Let me just find something, an object. See, I've done this in the past, and I used a customized sprite for this. But we'll just go with a snowball right quick. So you would have that as an image, and then you'd have a switch in here. Let's just use one, and you go freeze. And that's the only time that this will pop up. You want to put it below characters for this sort of thing so they can walk over it. You don't need a worry about trigger, but you do need a direction fix it so it doesn't you can use like a stepping thing in RPG Maker, and then it would like switch back and forth, so if you wanted it to kind of glow or something, you could sprite it that way. But for this purpose, we just need direction fix. And then that's it. Basically, you would just go like that, and if you wanted the entire pond to freeze, you would just with edges be a little bit much, so you could simply make it like this and make a path. And then you'd probably want to make some sort of like when they can exit the map, it turns that trigger off. And then you just, or that switch rather, and then you can just use the skill to turn the switch on with a common event, which you would do like this. And it's very simple. Control switches, freeze, on, and then in skills for, let's say, let's see, probably how you'd want to set this particular skill up is like a secondary skill. So here are my cold attack spells. We'd make this a menu screen skill, and then simply go other common event. And I didn't give it a name, but the freezy switch one, and then it would have a scope and none skill type still, yes, say 10 magic. Give it an icon, name, so on and so forth. Don't really need to save it. And then every time you use it, you activate it, and then when they exit that particular map cell section, then you would simply use the same sort of thing, only in the eventing, which exact same thing here. Freeze, okay, only set it to off. So that is an example of an active map skill. Bonus. Passive map skills are things like climbing, searching an area. You find a lot of these in Western isometric style games, like when you just enter onto a map, it automatically does a check against your passive, like, awareness is one that's used a lot. And then if you come close enough is another way to do it. And if they pass the check, it pops up an icon and lets you know something's there. Or it'll just activate it if you're doing it the hard way, because a lot of them give you an option to alert you to things being there, and other people, often it's a toggle in the options, whether or not you want an alert or not, and actually have to look for stuff. Most people just go ahead and use the, give you a pop-up message or something, because, you passed your skill check. Do you really want to have to, go over every single damn cell on the map just to see if something's there? Nobody really wants to do that. Besides, realistically, if you passed your awareness check, then you should have spotted something in the map anyway the character has, so it should alert you, the player, that such a thing has happened. So here's how you would do it. It's actually very simple and very similar to that, only you use variables. So what you do, and you don't actually have to make a skill in your skill menu. This is entirely done through variables. So first off, we need, like, let's say a vine. A rope will work. Put that in here. And then you'd have like an event on here. Same as characters, because this is something they need to interact with. And then what we want is a conditional branch. And we're going to go ahead and make a variable here. And the workload part of this, at least in RPG Maker, but I would imagine you would have to do it the same way for any system. Like I said at the start, you can use this exact same method for any development software. You're making the whole thing from scratch with your own coding even, because it's the basic idea is what's important. So the variable, we'll just call it Barrett, I believe, is the main character's name. I might be spelling it wrong. Climbing. So you'd need to make a separate skill for each character, is what I meant by the workload part. But that's the variable. And we're looking for greater than or equal to, and I can never remember what the hell icon it is. I think it's... This one is the right one, I think, and it no longer gives you the little cheaty menu. Whichever. You can look it up. It's whichever one is equal to or greater than, or lesser than, actually. So that might... No, it's the open part is facing towards the number. It's greater or equal to or lesser than, maybe. Whichever one it is, like I said, you can look it up. The important thing is to remember that it's equal to or lesser than your skill. Unless for some reason you want it higher than their skill because you're using some sort of weird negative system where you lower the number instead of raising it. Which you could do, but it's, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So let's say that for this, because there's a rope, it's an easy climb, we'll just require, say, 10. Which, for, let's say, active type characters, warriors and whatnot, they probably are going to start with something like that, or even more, right from the start. Now, what makes this a little bit wonky, and you could actually have these skills only on your main character, is that because of the way RPG Maker works, isometric games have individual characters, and I think you can kind of do that with RPG Maker, but I've not looked into it, because it, by default, uses a party system, where everybody's kind of together. So doing passive map skills with a group of characters that are just kind of together is, like I said, it's a bit wonky, because it would just assume that as long as anybody could pass the check, everybody can. So that's why you might just want to worry about your main character and just kind of assume that everybody else can just tag along with their help. But I mean, like I said, if you're using RPG Maker and you want to look into it to see if you can actually do more of an isometric split the party up sort of thing with a plugin, go for it. I'm just showing you how you would set up this sort of a skill. So like I said, we want it to be a constant of 10. Using another variable, you would be able to use a random number, but I don't know why you'd want to really do that for a skill like this. So I think that's equal to or greater than. Doesn't matter. Like I said, this is just a demonstration. That's the symbol you want is equal to or greater than 10. Alright. So basically what you would do here is then this is where you'd set up your transfer. Or you would allow them to get to wherever they're going. In this case, for RPG Maker MV, it would be a transfer command, which is right up here, transfer player. And let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and set this up completely so you can see exactly what would happen. Let's go ahead and move the event and go back into mapping here right quick. Going to get rid of this right quick. No. And let's see, how do I want to do this? Alright, this is the easy way. We make a new wall. We make it a new wall. Now see, if there's a ladder there, I wouldn't even make it a skill check. That would kind of be pointless. I mean, kind of with a rope there, you shouldn't need a skill check either. Normally I would do this with like some sort of roughed up cliff face or vines or something like that, not with something like a rope or ladder. Alright, then you might want to put it like that so they can actually move on to the icons. Alright. Testing map up here. Okay. And then we had put another transfer event here that takes them back down to the bottom, and this one is simply player touch. Whenever they touch it, it will take them back down. Alright. Here. And that is actually... that should work. That should just work. Alright, so now we have the variable which represents the skill. We can get our character in here. And then let's just create a quick... who looks like a climbing instructor? You look like a climbing instructor. Show text. Actor. Would you like to learn to climb? Show choices. Yes. No. Yes. Control variables. Barred climbing. And here we add 10. And then we can also add in another NPC over here. It'll be our twin sister. These are the climbing twins. Would you like to see your climbing skill? Yes. Show text. And let's see, it is \v. Right. Always check and make sure. Yep. Okay. I did that so I can see what the variable is. And of course it's not on here. Which one was it? Check right quick. Variable 12. We are going to look at the number, which is variable 12. Apply. Okay. Now we test. Save it changes, and now we look at it again. We look at a thing, we make it work. Don't know why I'm doing stupid accent. I'll stop now. How do you like my intro screen I made? Spooky. No, I don't need to say that. I need new. We're testing stuff. Alright. Whee! I forgot about the glow balls. Get out of my way. So, nothing happens. We go over here. Yes, it's at 0. Yes. It's at 10. We go up here. Yay! Whee! And we go back down. And there you have a passive map skill. I said for doing like an observation, that sort of thing, or awareness skill, the exact same setup basically. So, let's say in the terrain you want to put in something, again, for an inside map, this is a bit wonky. Let's see, what could I do here? Sir. Okay, I think I know how I'd do it. There's different ways you could do this. You could do it like with a flashing thing, but you could also use an alert icon, I believe. So let's just map in some rocks here, and we're going to make this do auto run to start with. Conditional branch, we're going to check another variable, and I did get the thing right on the variable. It's the open bit that's facing it and the line under it, equal to or greater than. So we'll go with awareness. Most people know it they understand it. Awareness, observation, search. Although search is something you would actively be checking something to do. This should just pop it up. This is a check, an auto check when they come onto the map, which I really need to make it. I know how to. It'll refresh when we use the climbing skill, so that works. Okay, so awareness, we'll just go ahead and use 10. If awareness equals 10, let's see here. We want show balloon icon on this event, exclamation, will do the job. And then we will have it go to, use a self switch and go to A. Actually, we need 2 branches on this one. Else, go to A. And then we make a new event page, self switch A on, and this is where we put our thing. Now you can make it to where it goes to, say, self switch B and do 2 pages and have it under self switch B, nothing's there. So they can only find the thing if they've spotted it. Otherwise, they can't find it. In this case, I would prefer to be a little bit more lenient, so the awareness check is just to alert them, but they can still search for it if they want. That way you kind of give them both. The ability to search for stuff, and they can passively on the map when they enter into it, get an alert. That way you're basically giving them 2 skills for the price of 1. It's just that instead of like a search skill, they actually have to go and do it. Or you could do both. You could have a search skill that they actually have to go and use on objects, and then the awareness skill would alert them. But don't make them do both on the same thing. Like, if they get the awareness alert, have it go to a page where they can just get the thing, and if not, then they would use the search skill to try to get the thing. So let's just have this be change gold, and let's use a variable. Random 1 to 5 works just fine. And then we'd control variables, random 1 to 5, random 1 to 5. Show text. Let's see, variable. Again, make sure I'm doing this right. And it's the first one, so just 1 backslash C, no, G, gives you currency, the name of your currency that you've set up in your system settings. And then we want another self switch. Let's go ahead and just go to D, new event page, D, apply, probably same as character, so they can't walk through the rock. And now they can't do it again. Alright. So, make sure this should be set up correctly. And we need the triplet over here. Good grief, they're cloning themselves. Alrighty, so control variables. Let's see here. Awareness. We're going to add 10. Would you like to learn awareness? Okay. Now, you wouldn't have this sort of a system for how they get the points into their skill. You'd have it with like using Yanfly's plugins. You could use job points to do it, so they get some job points when they level up, and then they can use those to buy levels in the skill. You could have them get another variable that acts the same way as the job points, and then they have to spend those on training NPCs to get them. There's different ways you can set that part up. Then we need choices, yes, no. Okay. Cut. Paste. Alright, and then the middle one is still going to be our would you like to see character. And we'll just go ahead and put in here, would you like to see your awareness skill? Which, I put that right underneath it, didn't I? So it was 13. Just to make sure everything is working. Alright, so this should be set up right. Let's go ahead and test. And I always play test anything that I'm doing like this right after I get done setting it up. That's why I have a testing map. Always. So, yes, 0. Would you like to see your awareness skill? Yes, 0. Okay. Yes. So again, so that should be set up. No alert. Let's go back down. Yes, make sure. Alright, so no glowy balls, get out of the way. So how this should work, get out of the way, glowy balls. No! Stop! When we go up to the top, watch the rock. Did not work. Alright. What did I do wrong? I did not set up the... Actually, it should have worked because it's at equals 10. To or greater than. Auto run. Let's try wait for completion. Oh, that's because it ran already. This is a bit of a conundrum. I'm trying to think. I'm going to have to make up a. Okay, I think I'm just going to have to go ahead and make up a new map cell. Make up a new little. I don't need the overworld bit. Just inside. That's going. No! Stop hitting wrong things, dumbass. Make room. Make room. Make room. Red room. Red room. Box. Box room. Okay. Player. And I shouldn't have done that. Because we need to be able to go up. Quick transfer. Testing. Up here. Copy paste. Copy paste. Might as well. Transfer. Yep, cell 20 down here. Okay. So now what we need to do is go ahead and copy our chit-chatty Kathy. Now they're quadruplets. Okay. So this should work this time. And this is actually how you'd want to set it up, because the awareness thing is the first time you go onto a map, it either passes the check or it does not. You can also add rolls to this, but that's a bit trickier, so I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, so first, sure, 0. Yes, 0. Would you like to learn awareness? No. So we're at 0. We should be able to go up here. No alert on the rock. Do it again. It. Yes. Yes, 10. Now it should work. Watch the rock. Yay! We've been alerted. And I messed up something on there. This is why we test. So I'll switch A because I made it below characters. But this is why I always play test stuff when I'm working it out for the first time in a new game. Like, knowing how to do something doesn't mean you're not going to mess things up in some small way. And believe me, if it's something like, let me lower this for a second, like, all this stuff is environmental things they can search in order to get resources, different plants and minerals and rocks and crystals and stuff. Trust me, I messed up all of these when I was making them, just little ways, a couple of different things. If I had forgotten, or if I had missed it, rather, if I had missed it before I started copy-pasting these testing events in to the maps I'm making, I could have copied them in hundreds of times before I caught the mistake, and then ended up having to go back and redo it all the way through the game instead of using, get it right in a testing map. It's a piece of advice I will wholeheartedly give you. Use testing maps to test out anything that you want to use many times over, like a random treasure chest that you can put into the game, the stuff like the resources for mining or any kind of resources for crafting that you get from the environment, stuff like these skills. Have a testing map, test it all thoroughly before you ever start putting it into the game itself, because you can always just bring up we can go back here, like the awareness thing. To make this a harder check, all you have to do is go in here and then change this number on that individual event. The important thing is to make sure that the system is working before you start putting these individual events into your game itself. So again, we know it doesn't work if it's at 0, and it does work if it's at 10, so that part we've established. We get our alert, like, there's something on the rock. Let's go look at it. We found 5 Belzels, which is the name of the currency in the game, just because I randomly generated that name and I thought it was amusing, or at least interesting. Like, personally, I don't care if you want to just use gold or silver or something simple, because people understand it. I mean, yeah, it's... Some might say, oh, everybody uses that, it's overused, it's a cliche, everybody has gold. Yeah, but it's there because people know what it means. I mean, you see, if you were playing a game, this game, the first time you found 5 Belzels, you'd probably be going, what the hell is a Belzel? If you didn't have a money window up in the corner there, up here, that shows you coin 5. Like, oh, that's the name of the money. Alright, so that's how you set up passive map skills. Fairly simple. Like I said, the only real drawback in RPG Maker is that I'm not sure about doing individual characters on the screen like an isometric game. If you're not familiar with isometric, it'd be a similar kind of top-down view, but usually kind of skewed to an angle. Often used in Western, like Dungeons & Dragons type games. Diablo, the old school original Diablos, old school Dungeons & Dragons games, Planescape Torment, one of my all-time favorites, is isometric style. That more kind of really worldy looking style, usually in the graphics, and top-down, and each individual character can be selected and moved around individually. That's isometric. If you want more examples and stuff, just look it up. So now let's get to the alignment system, how you set that up. And again, you can use this for alignment. You can use it if you're like a horror game or for a sanity meter, corruption. If you want to do like a 9 alignment system from Dungeons & Dragons, law, order, or I keep saying that, lawful, chaotic, good, evil, and to get the neutral axis, actually you would really just keep it those 2 meters. You would have, I'll show you how to do that. You can also add in, I sometimes use that kind of an alignment system, but I add in altruistic and mercenary, like how skewed your personality is towards wanting rewards versus just doing things for its own sake, which factors in even an evil character, because it would be someone who does evil just for the sake of doing evil. So altruism probably isn't the best word to use, but something to that effect. So here's how you'd set it up, and this is also very simple. Let's just go back over here so we can set up some new NPCs to give us our variables. And we'll go ahead and use somebody new. Yeah, sure. This will be our angelic NPC. And if we're going to have an angelic NPC that's going to raise our alignment, sanity, corruption, whatever, let's have somebody that looks evil. Okay. So let's just go back over here. So this would be the exact same thing. I could have gone to nature, because there are some... She'll work. She looks angelic enough. Would you? Actually, that's an example of how you can kind of make somebody have an interesting speech pattern. Would you like to see a alignment, bub? Sure. Choices. Sure. Okay. That's actually to see it. And then we can just copy paste. Would you like to increase you? Alrighty, so here we set up our variable, because a lot of the really nifty neato stuff you can do in RPG Maker is done through variables. And all variables are is a database, not check. It's something that exists in the database. It can be lots of different things. It can be numbers. It can be game data, which includes things like character names. It's just database entries. So a lot of the cool stuff you can do, a lot of the more complicated things you can do will involve variables. But this, again, we're just doing something simple here. So we'll just go to alignment. Now this is one you can personalize pretty easily because you would use dialogue checks mostly for this sort of stuff. Because that's usually what your alignment is going to affect. It's going to affect your options for dialogue and choices you can make for certain events in the game. And you can personalize all that stuff to certain characters a lot easier than the passive skills, which, as I said, just tend to the passive skills would include the entire party with the default makeup of RPG Maker's system for using a party. But this, because you can actually have it check for certain characters, and Barrett, and I'll show you how to do that too. So we want, so this is increasing it. We're going to increase it, and then we're going to just simply copy paste all of this stuff and bring it over to the evil version, who we will give the correct face. And for some reason she looks very kind for being like a succubus or something. Almost a motherly worried face for some reason, which is rather disconcerting if you think about it. And we're subbing this time. We're subtracting 10. And we'll just leave that in there. Go ahead and make that. So we want to show text. And it's ding ding. And this time it's 14. I do have a bit of a slippery memory on little things like this. Plus, I always just want to make sure. Show that variable. No, we could just have a single character for showing alignment. We can let them both do it easily enough here. So that increases by 10, that decreases by 10. And then let's go ahead and make another NPC. Let's nature. Let's use a donkey. A little puppy. So let's see how we want a conditional branch here, and we want to create an else branch. And how you would personalize this is go to Barrack Actor. No, you don't need to do that. You can still stick to just the variables. Sorry. You simply have a different entry for each character. Slap the forehead there. And we want equal to or greater than. And let's say we'll just stick to 10. And let's see, this is going to be a little bit more complicated because we need nested stuff here. So that should be right, and then we just copy that and paste it in. And paste it in again. So we edit, and we need -10. And then we have it simply at 0. So this can be a little bit more complicated, or you can end up with it being a bit complicated. I'm not sure if you could actually do neutral with this system. It should work. Actually, we need greater than or equal to for the negative numbers. That should be right. But anyway, let's see. Again, this is why you do testing, just to make sure things are going to work. There will always be tweaking. Always. So if we talk to the little doggy and we've got a good alignment, it's, I believe there is nature, woof woof. Wax tail licks your hand. Okay. Copy, paste. Woof 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 woof. Uncertain grrr. Alright, so let's see if this works. So let's go talk to the little doggy. Grrr. Would you like to increase the alignment, bub? Sure. Sure. 10. No. Waxtail licks your hand. Sure. I forgot. So. Grr. Sure. Or negative 10. Woof, 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 woof. There we go. That's how you do it. So basically, and your numbers could be anything you want. Again, it's simply a number. That's something the book I'm writing on doing this stuff, it's something I try to get across as many times as I can when it's pertinent, is that numbers when you're game developing any kind of games, the numbers themselves do not matter. They are just a representation of something that happens in the mechanics of the game. It doesn't matter if your hit points are 10 or 10,000. What matters is that the damage that's being done by enemies, and you to them inversely, gives the player the experience that you are wanting to give them. You would probably only have enemies doing like 1 damage. That's why really low numbers, you probably don't want to use them, because it becomes harder to balance and actually give some sort of progression. But you could have, instead of having enemies that increase their attack power, simply make it to where they can take more damage over time and potentially do a little bit more damage, so that if you start off with only 5 hit points at the beginning of the game and by the end you only have 20, you still get a progression there. Again, it's a lot harder to balance, it's a lot harder to keep the progression feeling like there's something happening at low numbers, but you can still do it. Like I said, what matters is that you are giving them the experience within combat that you are trying to give them, that you want to give them. So it doesn't matter if enemies do 1 damage or 1,000, it doesn't matter if you start off with 10 hit points or 10,000. It doesn't matter if your maximum hit points go all the way up to the highest amount you can have in RPG Maker, which using plugins can be 1 million or more. I can't remember how high Yanfly's core plugin does, because it allows you to change the default database stuff that, like the limits within RPG Maker. But that's how you would do an alignment system. It simply would be like a sliding scale of -100 to +100 would be the simplest way to do it. So for like neutral, good, evil, you'd probably want to have something like a check for anything equal, plus or minus, or equal to or greater than, or lesser than rather, up to say 30, and greater than or equal to on the negative side, -30 would be your neutral area. Perhaps maybe -10, -15 or something, depending on how much you want your evil acts to matter. And then you would simply make your good checks, again, something from between 30 up to 100. And how good they are would reflect the differences in dialogue options. Same thing for evil. Let's say we go with the -15 instead because we want kind of a harsh system. Even any negative number, you could actually make it to where you're only neutral if you're from like 0 to 30. And any negative number means that you're evil. You know, you've started down the path of evil. If you don't start doing some good deeds, you're going to become you're evil. So it just depends on how harsh you want to be in either direction. But let's say it's -15. You can do some nasty things, like the occasional pickpocketing and stuff for a thieving character that would give them a bit of a negative alignment. But murdering somebody would be like -50 or something. Just murdering somebody in cold blood. So then, yeah, again, it would be greater than or equal to something between -100 and -15. And that would give you your sliding scale of just how evil this asshole is. And again, for order chaos, exact same thing. Neutral would be your -15 to +30, +31 to +100, chaotic, or order if you prefer. You can do it in either direction. And the -16 down to -100 would be your other one, or chaos or law, whichever. So that way you can get with two sliding meters that you've created with your variables. You've created the 9 alignment system. Mercenary, altruistic, exact same thing. Or whatever you would want to use instead of the place of altruistic. Now, I think there are ways you can create sliding scale things within the menus. I don't know how to do it. I've never tried to do that. But you can use plugins. Yanfly's status core and associated plugins will allow you to view character variables. So you can just have it in that menu. Would be the name would be something like good to evil, with a couple of dashes in there or something. Chaos, order, mercenary, altruistic. Again, altruistic is doing things for their own sake, so I'm not sure what other word you might want to use. I'd have to think about that. What would be the best word, but altruistic kind of works. And again, you just have it would just show the variable, same as the NPCs do, just in the menu, the game menu. And again, the exact same thing for a sanity system for like a horror game. Every time there's an event that impacts their sanity, it takes some away. That sort of a scale you would probably start at 100. That would be their default. Like when you first have the game start, you'd have like an auto run event. Like this is how you'd do it. You'd have auto run at the very start of the game on the same map that they start on. And you'd probably put it up on a wall somewhere out of the way. And you just do control variable. We'll create a sanity variable. Add 100. then self-switch A so it doesn't repeat itself endlessly and freeze the game. That's what'll happen if you have an auto run. No, I didn't need that. If you have an auto run event that just keeps going, you either need to put in some sort of a self switch to make it go away permanently, unless you activate it again for some reason, or you can use erase event. Erase event means that they will come back if you enter onto the map again. So you'd use erase event for things like respawning enemies. Self switches for anything you want to go away until you either want it to come back and trigger, you turn the switch off. Actually, for self switches, you can't do that without interacting with the event again, so you'd have to use a regular switch. But that's not a problem because, as you can see, I've got up to 800 switches, and I think the maximum is in the thousands. So you can put a lot of switches in your game. You can put a lot of variables in your game. It just depends on how many you need, really. Will I ever use 800 switches? Probably not. That's a lot of damn switches. But I am doing a lot of stuff in this game that requires quests and stuff to have their individual switches, several for each quest. Like when you start, during the quest, when it's over, all that stuff. So the game will use a lot of switches by the time it's finished. I might have to increase the number. You never know until you're finished. But yeah, that's how you would give them 100 sanity to start with. And then, again, using games like Amnesia or Call of Cthulhu, Lovecraftian games often have sanity systems. It'd be every time they encounter monsters that decrease sanity, every time they suffer from like spells or even use certain spells for Lovecraftian games, because in the Lovecraftian universe, using magic means you're meddling with things that man should not meddle with, humans should not meddle with, and usually it has some sort of a repercussion. There's a consequence, and often it's simply you're kind of making yourself go crazy and you're corrupting yourself by using any kind of eldritch magic. But whatever system you're wanting to use, because you can just use this like any game, like, even just in a general RPG, and have a sanity or corruption. Again, it's the exact same principle. The game mechanics are exactly the same for all of them. What would change is how they impact the world around the characters. So for like a sanity meter, you might want to do some things. No. Well, yeah, we don't really need this. So you could do some things like, say, using horror tile sets, and I do have some. I don't know if I have any of them in this particular game because I don't really need them. But I can show you how you would do it without having to specifically use those tile sets. So let's say you just want some decor. So here's a way you could do it. Rather than something up on the wall, I'm not going to go through the whole thing and test it. I'm just going to show you what you do. So if they are sane, and let's say you may not even need a negative number for sanity. That could just be 0 to 100. Unless you want to make it to like 100 to 0, they're only going to be suffering minor effects, but then they start getting into negative numbers. That's where they're going woohoo, loopy, crazy, wacko. Time to call the men in white from the booby hatch. Anywho, so you have your little pod event. 420, man. No. So normally it would look like this, but then you'd have your conditional branch variable sanity. You'd run your check. In this case, again, you would want, this would be a greater than or equal to, I believe. Yes, because it's a degrading scale, so you need greater than or equal to, and let's say they get down to 50, and then it would trigger a self switch, and would be an auto run event for some as soon as they come onto the map. Which, again, for some types of games that can do regular update checks for events and stuff, or you have more control over how the events trigger, like just movement. Like a 3D game, you can trigger events and stuff off of if they're looking at it or not. You know, they could just turn around in a room and it might trigger it. RPG Maker is more limited in that regard, but again, the principle is exactly the same. It just depends on the software you're using or you're making and how you are able to trigger your events to happen. The basic core principle behind it is that you have an event, and depending on what the number in your database is for their sanity level at that time, it will do one thing or another thing. Or you can have an entire series of things that may happen. So in this case, like I said, because just the way this RPG Maker software works, you would, if sanity is less than... Actually, you'd probably do it like this. You wouldn't necessarily have any image to start with. You would do it as an auto run thing. And you might do something like this. Go ahead and do the nesting. So if it's equal to or greater than 50, they'll get self switch A. Then we want B, damn it. Then C. Alright. So then we'd create 1, 2, 3. A, B, C. And then we'd change this to greater than or equal to, say, 25. And let's say this is where we'd go to negative. Let's say negative 10. And so let's see. For this one, all we would want to do is, again, go down here and put in the pot for the next one. And again, I'm not going to go ahead and completely test this. I'm just trying to give you an idea of how you would do it. You would use the broken pot, and then for 4, we might put something in that's a bit strange. So this is where you'd probably want to go ahead and go into a graphics editing program and do something like, because you could do, like I talked about with a snowball earlier, you could have, you know, how you would do this and make sure you get everything lined up is you would just, I use GIMP, graphics editing, or no, graphics imaging, I don't remember what it stands for. It's a free Photoshop type program. So you just drop this in, so you have your template basically, and then you take that pot, and then you'd make a row of 3 of them, and you'd maybe do something like put a face on the middle one, or writing on it. Writing would be hard at this scale because it'd make it hard to read it, but you could put something like a little face on it, or something that just kind of grins or leers at them. And then you would, over here in your autonomous movement, you'd go to custom, and you'd put that image in there, and you would select it. Again, just the same thing with like the snowball. You'd select the top corner, only you'd probably put it up here. There, and then you go with stepping and direction fix. Actually, you don't need to do that. You can do fixed, but you'd probably want to make it slow and the frequency at the lowest. And then you'd apply that. So if you were doing it with like The Rock, again, you'd just put a face on it or something. But we'd use this graphic, and then we'd put like a, you know, in the graphics editing, you just kind of maybe put a handprint, a bloody handprint, or a leering face, some symbols, anything would work. and you put that in there with a stepping and direction fix turned down really low, and it doesn't need to do anything else. What's important here is the sanity check. So again, I'm pretty sure this would be how it would work. If it's 50 or more, they're just going to see the pot. If it's 25 to 50, they're going to get the broken pot. And you want to always make sure you do it in the descending order, because if you did it the other way around, it would see that it's over 25 first and then go to that one. So you always want to make sure you go with the highest number down to your lowest when you're doing this sort of thing. And then they get to the fourth one, and that's the one where very slowly, but every now, depending on how much they're paying attention, they will notice that occasionally the thing will flash with the weird image that you've put onto the graphic. I can go ahead and show you. It's not a big deal. I'll be completionist here. Oh, all right. I can psychically sense you demanding that I show you every last little thing. Alright, so let's see. Documents. No, not that. Games. Grimstone. Images. See, we can do this with character stuff. Let's see, where's other at? Make sure. You said this is for your template. There we go. And then we would want images, tile sets, inside B, I believe, yes. Okay. We zoom the fuck in. We cut out the pot, paste it in, give it its own layer, which is just the button down here. If you don't know how to use GIMP, this is something you'll have to learn to use. I'm not going to show you the entire, every last little thing. Sorry. I had to earn my skills. You will too. Everything requires some degree of a learning curve. So you'd take that, and then down here there's a duplicate, and you'd make 2 duplicates. And I duplicated the wrong one. Alright, you'd want to make sure you got these lined up right, otherwise it will shift around, and that's not exactly the effect you're going for, most likely. Often you'll have to do some extra tweaking just to make sure everything's lined up and you don't have things happening that you don't want to have happen. I need to get closer. So we'll just do the simple face. We're going to make another layer, and I'm just going to use the brush tool, decrease the size so we're at a scale that we can work with, and we'll just go kind of the cliche bloody face. Then we'll use no. That's not too bad. We don't necessarily want to make this super obvious. No. You do that. Actually, I kind of like that one. And it's kind of hard to see there, though. You always need to go ahead and check it close up, and let's just go with no, not burn, multiply. Alright. So that gives us our thingamabobbermajiggy. We'd export it as pot with face. .png, export it. There we go. Put that down. So then go to fall. And there we go. Stepping direction fix. That should all be correct. So again, this would be one where it would only happen when they first come onto the map. You might want to set this up with individual switches for each one instead of self switches, because then you could control it, whether it, for example, if you're going to make a haunted house, you would want switches that you can turn on and off through events, like transfer events, so that they can trigger later in the game things that. So this is how you do that. Let me go back in here. I'm going to have to change this. Instead of self switches, we need individual switches. So we'd go to control switches, and again, I'll just go ahead and go down here. Haunted pot 1. Copy that 2 more times. 2 and 3 apply. Alright, so that right there. Copy, paste, 2, K, 3, and we're good. Alright, so then we would want to go ahead, and since we're making our sanity system over here, we'll go ahead and make a new NPC. Let's just go with somebody from in here. This lady is like a nurse, so she will be our sanity. NPC character. This is a dude. Okay, the dude looks like a nurse or a doctor or something. Some sort of physician person type thing. So would you like to alter your sanity? Yeah, sure. Increase, decrease. Could have just done this with the others, but I wanted to do the saint and the devil sort of thing. Alright, so we control variable. Again, sanity. So that was increase. We increase it by 10. When decrease, copy paste. Subtract by 10. No, we need to add there. And then we can go ahead and put in a second one. Would you like to check your sanity? I just do show choices, yes, no. Text, don't need that. Variable, and the variable is 15. Alright, so that will allow us to manipulate our sanity score. We want to go back. Did I complete this as an event? Yes, I did. Alright. So we'd still put that up in the corner, and our numbers on this were 50 or less, 50 to 25, so let's go ahead and change this one so it's a little less irritating. We'll do this 25 at a time. That way we should be able to get up and down the scale pretty rapidly. Fairly rapidly. Alright, so now what we'd do is we'd go ahead and delete that one for the moment, and we'd control switches, this one off. No, damn, how would we do that? No, this would work. There for a second I was thinking, oh crap, that won't work. Yes, it will. We just need to make sure that the pot event is set up correctly by changing these switches up here. So this one would be 1, 2, and 3. So what'll happen again is we'll leave the map. We'll when we come onto the map to start with, it will have a sanity of 100. We'll get this event. We leave the map, it turns all of those off, it goes back to this one, the default base event. It'll check it again when you come back on. That way you can set up things, like I said, like a haunted house game where they could pass the same item 50, 100, 300 times through the course of playing the game, depending on how long you make the game, how many times they have to pass through that area. Their sanity drops below a certain point, it'll change on them. And that's where you start getting into creeping people out. And there's an entire section in the book I'm writing about game development, how to make games. A substantial section on horror, because it's a genre I've studied quite extensively and really dissected. I mean, it's a pretty substantial section covering, all pretty much everything I could think of on the theory behind writing fiction, horror fiction, and making horror games. And one of the big things that you can use to creep people to fuck on out, serious creep factor, is take something that they're familiar with, they've seen it a lot of times, and then change it. And it doesn't have to be drastic. A bloody face is a bit much. It doesn't have to be that drastic. Things like just making it broken. Or maybe it's dirty. It gets dirty to start with. And then maybe it's broken, and dirty and broken. And then when the sanity starts really getting low, maybe that's when they start seeing like blood spots on it. And then at the very lowest sanity, that's when they would see the face. You could get that entire sliding scale so that any number of things around this haunted house, mansion, or whatever would just start shifting on them. The longer they're playing the game, the lower their sanity gets. If they don't do anything to correct it, and depending on your game, you may make it very harsh and not allow them to correct loss of sanity, everything could start shifting on them and get really wonky. And then start getting really spooky. And then you kill them. No. Well, maybe. It's your game. How it ends is up to you. Personally, I don't like ambiguous. People call it ambiguous, but it's actually uncertain. Ambiguity means that there's more than one interpretation for something. Uncertainty means you don't understand it. They both kind of mean the same thing, but in different ways. Basically, like a movie that ends where you don't know what happened, that's uncertain. I'm not certain of how it ended. It's not ambiguous. Ambiguous would mean that you knew what happened, but you didn't know exactly how to feel about it. That's when it's ambiguous. Look the words up for the correct definitions. They do kind of mean the same thing, but in very different ways. But anyway, I don't like that kind of fiction. Some people think that, that lets you make up your own ending. Well, I don't give a shit what your ending is. Just tell me your story. It's not my job to come up with the ending for your story. It's your job. It's your story. Okay, and it's not like I don't have an imagination. It's just I prefer to apply it to things that I'm doing. And when somebody else is telling me a story, I want them to tell me the story. I want them to finish their story. Because I don't care how it ends. I just want to know how it ends. Take me on a ride. Take me on a journey. And every good journey has a destination. Even a vacation. And to some way of thinking, a vacation isn't over until you've gotten home at the end of it. Then you've gone on a complete journey. So the same thing with games. To me, it's mental jacking off, mental masturbation for both the player, the fans of the thing, and the person who made it, because they're trying to look clever, and the people that love that sort of shit want to feel smart or whatever. And it's like, I don't care. Just tell me your story, because you know that's just how I feel about it. It's not like I couldn't figure out an ending if I wanted to, but I don't want to. It's not, like I said, it's not my job. It's not my story. It's your story. You finish it. Because, any ending that people say, oh, that means you can make up your own ending and feel how you want about it. Yeah, but it's not real. It's just in your head. You didn't make it. It's non-canon, if you want to use that jargon. So, like I said, that's just how I feel about it. Your story, your game, you finish it. That's just my view. Anyway, the Sanity system. So, we've got that set up. This should be correct to turn the switches on and off. Now, the thing is about doing it this way is that you might have a lot of different switches. So what you'd probably want to do is do all of this in a common event, all the control switches. And again, you do that common events, and then you just put it in here and just have all the switches in the entire... Well, not the entire thing. You'd only have to do it by room, really. So I guess it's not that big a deal. It depends on how much crap you have in any individual room. So you can still do it this way. Like I said, it just depends on how much stuff you have in the room. I mean, if you only have like one or two things in any given room or map cell, because it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a house. It can be out in the environment, in the world, whatever. It just depends on how much stuff you got. I mean, doing it this way, when it's only a handful of items and whatnot, but I mean, if you've got like 5 or 6 different switches for each item, if you got like 5 switches per item, 5 items, that's 25 switches. You'd probably want to do that as a common event and then just call to it, so you don't have huge things of control switches off on all of your exiting things. Just call the common event. But, it's how you want to do it. I mean, it's really the same CPU load as far as I know, because the game has to do the switches off, on. It has to do that stuff anyway. It's just how you call it to do it. Call to the back end of the game to do it. So let's see. We need to start on this side. And let's test this. This should work. Start new. You can use your mouse on RPG Maker MV. Okay, so this should... We go down here. The pod isn't showing up at all, so I did something wrong. Did I not set that to... Nope, I didn't. Auto run. This is why we test. This is why we test. Start new. Alright. So, go down here. And it's still... I don't know why that's doing that. Auto run. Same as characters. 1. Haunted Pot 1. Same as characters. Action button. Same as characters, action button, direction fix. Direction fix. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I don't know why this isn't working. I mess up something on here? No. But we do need that to go away on this side. That ran. Control switch. Huh. Let's try that again. I don't know why that isn't wanting to work. It should work. It should auto run make the check on whether the... Oh, it's because he doesn't have any sanity. No, he should. That event should run. No. Yes, it's at 100. No, it's freezing it up, so it's not actually finishing the process. What the hell is the problem here? So, again, this is why we test things. Alright, let's try this. We don't want to do that. We want to... Alright, self-switch A is on. Self-switch A is on. Self-switch A is on. Let's see if that has any positive effect on the outcome here. I could have something wrong in the actual conditional branch checks. So again, we should have 100 sanity. Nope, that's still not working. Okay. Let's see what the problem. What the frick is the problem? We've got the switches correct. Haunted pot 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. Variable sanity is that should be equal to or greater than 50. That should work. It should work. Maybe try parallel process. This RPG Maker MV can sometimes be extremely picky on exactly how you set things up. This should work. It doesn't interrupt anything, but it's also not... The event's there, but it's not actually changing. Well, that did absolutely nothing, so... Honestly, I don't know what the problem with this is. It should be working. Because it should auto-run, run the check, turn the switches on. You can't have it erase the event, because if you erase it, it disappears entirely until you come back on, so it would just erase itself over and over again. It should be doing it. It should be working. These are all on action button. That should work. It's something messing up in here, and I don't know what it is. Else branch. Try that. Did I make it lesser than or equal to? On accident? Is that all it is? That's what it is, isn't it? Then that one actually should be the other. Alright, let's try it now. That's probably what it was. I had it on lesser than or equal to rather than greater than. Cross fingers, please. Yes, that's all it was. And it's not going to disappear or play with us. So now let's try this again. Decrease. Yeah, 75. Decrease. Yes, 50. So let's go ahead and decrease it again. Now we're definitely under 50. The pot's broken. Go back up. Increase it. No. Increase it. No. The pot is whole again. Decrease. No. Now we're at 0. Let's go ahead and drop it one more time. No. Actually. Yep. And okay, that's shifting around more than I probably would have liked, but and we're also a bit off on the placement because now it's, well, I guess if you want it to do a little shimmy shimmy, that's not spooky so much as goofy looking because it's going too fast. Good grief, we had it on the lowest settings here. Okay, let's go ahead and go with a custom route then. Sure. Let's see. And we do this by having it turn. No. I'm thinking. Just a second. Actually, yes, we'll need to change the graphic to do this. I believe. I do believe. Because we want this to actually turn instead of simply... try to get it lined up correctly here. Okay. Alright, so that should be lined up properly. We need to move the little creepy facey dude. Alright, that go bye-bye. Then we simply export that. Which unfortunately... Actually, let's just go ahead and make a new image, it'll be easier. Because again, RPG Maker can be picky about how it will recognize when you've changed graphics. This way, we get the change without having to worry about it, because it's a new file, it picks that up immediately. But for some reason, if you want to change one, often you'll have to restart it. Kind of annoying, but what you gonna do? So let's see. To make sure I have mentally my ups down, so you start face down is the top one. Turn left, turn right. Okay. Face down, turn left, turn right. We actually don't need to use turn right on this. So we would go to custom route, and it should, again, it's at the lowest possible speed. And really all we need to do is we'd want to make this a parallel process. Probably. So let's say 600. And then turn left, wait about 60 frames, turn down. Okay, so we need to make this parallel process. You do not want to have too many of these on a map at any given time because um, it'll slow the game down if you have a whole bunch of them. But for the most part, like just the degrading things. So instead of the flashing face, you just leave it at the face. If their sanity is low enough, and I'll do like I said, first it's a clean pot, then you make it dirty looking, dirty and broken, then maybe like some blood spots, then a bloody handprint or face or something, and then just the image just changes. That's fine. This is for the shifting image, or the pot itself having the face go boo. Save changes, test this again. This should work. So it should be about 10 seconds before it pops in for a second and then goes back. Alright, so decrease, decrease, decrease. No, I didn't want to. Damn it. Oh, I'm completely undoing what I did. Decrease it. Decrease it. Decrease it. Yes. Okay. So now we should have this. Okay. And it's still going way too fast. It should be waiting 600 frames. Okay, I did something wrong. Root, wait, edit. Turn left. Did I have it turn the wrong way? I changed the thing, right? Yeah, I should turn left. And then go back. Oh, because I had it on stepping. Let's try walking and see if that fixes it. This should fix it. This is why we test. Decrease. No. This is a bit annoying, but remember that this is all for testing purposes, so normally you'd have these kind of like negative, they'd lose 5 sanity here, 10 sanity here, they'd get a little bit back, lose some more. It would be a shifting thing. Okay, not gonna do it. Okay, it's not doing it. Maybe I should have it turn right instead. That's the problem. Or is this blinking in and out so fast, possibly, that I'm not even seeing it? Let's try 90. 60 frames a second. You have an entire second. You should be able to see it. It should. I mean, it would be quick, but you should see it. Oh, direction fix. That's the problem. Ay, 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 ay. This is why we test. Decrease it. No. Decrease it. No. Decrease it. No. Fine. Decrease it? No. Decrease it? Yes. Alright. So now it should work. Come on. I have it turning the wrong way this time. I fixed the actual problem but made a new one. This is why we test. Because we are fallible. Zero, one more time. Alright. Now it should hopefully work. Not too fast. Walk around. Yada yada yada. Come on. There we go. And then it goes away. So I mean, it still looks a little silly, but imagine, I mean, it's a haunted house game. You're doing something, you're fiddling around in the room, you're looking around, and that suddenly pops on there and you go, what the hell? That's probably too long. You might want to decrease it to more like 30 frames, 40 frames, because then it would just flash. You'd want to fine tune it and get that flash of it just long enough to catch somebody's attention, and then have it be gone. So that's the sort of thing that they would be noticing it and going, what the hell did I just see? But then, 10 seconds, you might want to increase that to more like 15 seconds or something. A long enough time so that if they stare at it for just a little bit or look over in that area, they're like, okay, then go back to whatever they were doing. And then, they're concentrating on something else. And then peripheral vision, it pops up again. They look over, but it's so quick, it's gone, and then you're like, again, it's just fucking with the player. And a lot of good horror games, that's what you want to do, especially towards the beginning. You want to do things to creep them out, mess with their heads. So, doing that quick little flash of something, I mean, the face is a bit blunt, but you could do lots of little things. Like, I mean, it depends on how good you are at editing graphics or making your own graphics. Like, you could do a painting. RPG Maker, this would be difficult because you'd have to do multiple cells, which you can do. Whoa. Did I put wrong things for the wall there? Maybe the graphic settings are wrong. Shouldn't be. Did I make the ceiling into a wall? Or the wall into the ceiling and the ceiling into a wall? What did I do? Oh, that's supposed to be ceiling and that's the wall. I made them both ceiling. Tiles. Oopsie. There we go. Compulsive saving. Alright, so that's how you'd set up that sort of stuff. Again, I was talking about doing a painting. So you could, basically you'd edit it the same way. You'd have your thing up here, and then, like, you can use in the template for like something big enough to be noticeable, that for like a customized painting thing that you had made, you would probably make it take up the entire 4 cells here. And then maybe you'd have a face in this portion of it. And then what you'd do is or you could do the entire painting shifting. And you could do that by, so using the same method of just turning the image. So how you would do that with the switches is, and you'd need 6 switches to make it work, because each cell has to be its own separate thing on that screen, on that menu, or that map piece. So how you'd do it is you'd have the 6 different cells here that make up the painting, each one with its own switch. This would probably be just a singular off-on thing. and probably the only thing in the room. Well, it depends. This would be a good one for a bedroom or something, because it'd probably be about the only thing you want to change for that room. So let's say you want this to be kind of a drastic smack in the face sort of thing. So you'd have your painting in the 6 cells, and there are paintings, including horror game painting tile sets and stuff. I've got some of them. You can buy them. RPG Maker. Is it .com? Just look up RPG Maker if you're using this software. If you're using your own or different software or something, you have to use those resources or make your own. But this is how you do it in this software. So, but let's say you are able to make your own sprites, so you make this painting and you make 2 versions of it. And you don't actually have to cut it up or anything. You just make sure that it fits within these 6 cells or sprite areas. And you'd make the painting, and you'd make the normal version, and then the messed up, going crazy version. So you'd put the first one up here, and then you'd put the second one down here. And then you'd have to go through, and the exact same... Actually, this one you wouldn't need the movement stuff. You'd just be switching it. So that makes it a lot easier. It's just an on-off thing. So all you do is that, let's say this is when their sanity first drops into the negative numbers. And maybe it's a save room is where you're going to put this. They have to go to a certain room to save the game instead of saving anywhere. You can set up save spots in RPG Maker and V and other game systems too. So I know there's one horror game, I think it was a Resident Evil one, used typewriter. You could do something like that, a typewriter, a journal that they have to write in. The Evil Within, the first one, uses a check-in sheet for a hospital. The second one uses the radio thing. Just depends on the mechanic you want to use and how you symbolically want to allow them to save their progress. So again, you would simply create your 2 different versions, and you'd just this one here, one fitting into these 6 cells, and then you'd have it up on the wall, and you'd do it like this. Just go to, where are you? The other one. Okay, so again, you'd have the first painting in the first 6, and then the second one in these 6. Okay, so basically you'd put the first one there, and this is going to look really strange. I don't know. Let me look in the tile sets. Is there any kind of a large painting? There is. There's these 2. So I can do it with 2 frames, and then the process is exactly the same if you want to do it with 6. Exact same method. Then switch. Let's see. How would we do this? Alright, let's go ahead and Haunted Painting 1. So we need 2 switches to do 2 cells. 1 and 2. There's 1. New page. Thing there. And we'd go ahead and get rid of that. Don't need anything in there. So then we'd make the conditional. We can just go ahead and use this one since we've already got it set up. Except we don't need that. We're just going to make this a simple if and. So let's see, make this one real simple. We're just going to make this greater to or equal than 1. Lesser than or equal to -1. So this should work. Because this, like I said, this is one that to do this specific freak out thing, you would probably, like I said, put it in the room where they save or someplace where they visit frequently enough there that they would get really familiar with it. And this would be, as soon as their sanity dips into negative numbers, this triggers, they're going to see it, and it's just, hopefully they're going to see it, and it's just going to just be that kind of slap in the face of, oh, what the hell is going on now? That sinking feeling in the gut. What's going on? Nothing's ever happened in the save room before. This has changed. Why? What's happened? What's going on? That's the feeling that you're going for. You can't control how people react. I mean, as a game developer, that's something you have absolutely no control over. It's how people will react to things. You can just hope that they have the reaction that you're aiming for. Use a bit of psychology. Because again, like I was saying, you put yourself in the player's shoes and go for what you think the average person would probably react. How they would react, I should say. Because again, you have a save room that it's probably the place they visit the most throughout the entire game, like a haunted house game, obviously. You'd have one room that they go to save in, it's like the safe room. It's like the one room where they feel like nothing's going to happen. Nothing bad's going to happen. And then their sanity slips into negative numbers, and this will probably be a good ways into the game, so they feel safe there. Nothing has ever happened to make them feel unsafe in this room. Nothing has ever happened to make them feel creeped out. Nothing bad. And then their sanity slips into negative numbers, and suddenly this painting that they've seen hundreds of times maybe, depending on the length of the game, dozens of times certainly, it changes. And it doesn't even have to be really gory or messed up. It just needs to be something different enough. Like again, if you're able to do your own graphics, your own spriting, like a landscape, but then you switch it for something that looks rotten. And because of the visual scale of RPG Maker, that can be hard to do that sort of stuff. But it could just be that. It could be a big portrait of a family, and then their heads are gone, replaced with like bloody stumps. That's a bit gory, but it would get the point across. Something like that. Make sure we've got the right switches. Okay, so that should be set up correctly. No, we need this one to be greater than or equal to, or lesser than or equal to. And again, like I said, sometimes doing the switches on here can be a little bit wonky. Or the conditional branches. You just have to fiddle with it until it works, basically. So in this case, this simple example, we're just doing the two halves of the map. No, we needed this. Okay. And then we copy, paste, and then we do the other side. Actually, it doesn't even have to be a messed up version of the painting. It could just be the painting itself just changes. Something simple. It could, again, The Evil Within, if you've ever played that or seen somebody play that game, I've watched Markiplier's playthrough of those games. Several times, those games, I really like them, and I like watching his playthrough of them. The Evil Within, Dead Space games, Doom. I like watching Markiplier's playthroughs of games like that. So that should be set up correctly. Then we need to go ahead and we can do this. No control switches. Off. And no. Click the right thing. Okay. So that should work. Hit the play button and test. This should work. Should work. It went so well last time. Alright, so our sanity should be at 100. And I didn't set up the parallel process. Same as characters. No, this needs to just be an auto run. Okay. Again, this is why we test. This is why we test. Start new, okay. Now let's see. The map's on the wall. So let's go back up here. Decrease it. Yes, so now it's at 75. Go back. The map's on the wall still. So decrease it. Yes. 50. The map's still on the wall. Nothing spooky so far. Nothing creepy. The map's on the wall. Oh, the pot's broken. Was it like that before? Oh, now it's at 0. What's going to happen? Neither one of them are there. Clearly, we do not want to go into this room when it's at 0. It doesn't know how to read it. So there's another conditional branch issue to keep in mind. Probably best for this one, 0, as long as it's over 0, and the same for these. Rather than 1, have it at 0. So yeah, whatever your lowest positive number would be, always make sure that you have something in between so it would know what to do. So that should fix that problem. Simple enough. I'm not going to do every single step along the way, but pot and map are present. Let's go ahead and decrease down to 0 again. I didn't need to check it. It's at 0. This should have fixed that. Yes, so pot's broken, but map's still there. But now we decrease. We're at negative 25. Oh no. The map's changed into a painting. Oh no. Oh dear. That's not good. Something bad's happening. What the hell was that? We're all gonna go crazy and die. Oh shit. And there you go. So that's how you would set up your passive map skills for things like climbing, again, jumping, like jumping across chasms and stuff, breaks in the ground, awareness, any of the stuff. Again, look up some isometric games that use those types of skills. They'll often be like athletics, or you can just look to things like Dungeons and Dragons and look at some of the different types of skill checks. You can use it for pickpocketing, lock picking, that sort of stuff, for doing tests on picking pockets and picking locks. It would work better for picking locks rather than pockets, but you could still do that. You would simply, again, it's simply a skill check. You would, any character, any NPC, you would want them to be able to pick their pocket. You'd probably include it as a dialogue option, and then you simply do the skill check the same you would, like I showed you earlier, for the climbing and anything else. Yeah, pretty much anything that you can think of that would be more. I call them passives because to me, an active skill is something that you use it to change the environment actively. You know, it does something. Whereas a passive map skill is, again, it's something that you interact with the environment in some way or NPCs in some way. but not, you know, not in an active manner necessarily. So I suppose pickpocketing or picking locks would be an active skill in some ways from the map, but to me, I find categories useful. And again, to me, an active map skill would be something like hookshot in Zelda games, anything that has to do with something actively happening. Whereas passive is more just, again, like jumping across things, climbing, checking the environment, awareness checks, or searching. And then you can do the exact same thing once again for dialogue interactions, rather not necessarily alignment based, although again that works too. But you can use like a charisma skill if you want to have different dialogue options for that. Those would be passive social skills, whereas active social skills would be things that increase your charisma, or you use them to get some sort of extra option in dialogue. Like you could say, again, you'd probably use it as a common event and have a tag or something, a switch that would turn on and off for like deceptive would be one you could use for lying to people. You could use like a rogue or a mage could have a spell that does it. Like in a case of a rogue, it could be like a prayer to the trickster god, something like that could trigger it, and you'd use a common event, hit the switch, and it turns on to the deceptive switch, and then you have that in the dialogue option. Or you could even have deception again as a skill, the same way with all the others. And using the active skill turns it on, but it's still something that they have to get better at over time, so it's kind of a combination of active and passive, but you're activating it when you want to use it. Whereas just the deceptive skill itself, to lie to people, that would just be a passive social skill, but if you want to give yourself like a spell that makes you deceptive, or something that actually allows them to use that deceptive skill, rather than just being able to use it at any time, then it becomes an active skill. Might seem a little bit weird, but again, it's just, to me, a passive skill is something that you use by interacting, and it's available at all times, but you use it as an interaction, whereas an active skill, you actually have to use it. Like using a spell to freeze the water, to make yourself a better liar, to make yourself more attractive, if you want to do that sort of stuff for social skills in games, for putting out fires with a rain spell, blowing up rocks that are in your way with a fire spell of some kind, an explosive spell. So yeah, most of the types of skills you'd see in Zelda games I would call active map skills. Whereas, like the isometric type games with the awareness checks or athletic checks, that sort of stuff, the sort of stuff that comes mostly from RPG games, pen and paper RPGs, I should say, tabletop, like Dungeons and Dragons, World of Darkness, Rifts is one. There's ones for Warhammer. There are probably thousands upon thousands of different RPGs out there. Dungeons and Dragons is really the first one, though. At least it's the first one that most people are aware of and were aware of. There might have been precursors, I'm not sure. But I don't think there were. I think Gary Gygax invented the tabletop RPG with the original Dungeons and Dragons. I think. But yeah. So that's how you do the skills, and again, the alignment systems, it doesn't matter what your scale is. You can go 100 to 0, or 100 to negative 100, 1,000, negative 1,000. It just, again, the numbers themselves don't really matter. It's just how fast and how accurate you want to be, and how many levels you want. I mean, you wouldn't really need 1,000 unless for some bizarre reason you really did want to be able to check against, like, 1,000, because really all you need is the number of steps that you're even going to use. So if you're only ever going to use like 5 steps, technically that's all you need for your number. You only need up to 5. You could do 1 or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that would give you actually up to 6 steps. But that's cutting it too close, because then you don't have much of a gradient in there. That's why 0 to 100 is usually pretty good, because that you don't necessarily want something to happen different for every single step along the way, basically. But say every 20 points something happening, as far as dialogue options or some changes in the environment, that sort of stuff. Whereas for like the passive map skills, that's usually 0 to 100, because you base it off of percentile system. You could even set it up with a Dungeons and Dragons D20 system. It takes more work because you have to increase the skill by the dice roll, and then after they're done doing the check, that you have to decrease it by the same dice roll. This is how you do that. If you wanted to set up a D20 system for the game, we can go back up here to our climbing skill, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so he already would have whatever his skill would be. This isn't the doing dice rolls doesn't have anything to do with that. So what we'd do is we'd create another variable, and it'd probably be one of the first ones you would make, and you do D20, and you do it random 1 to 20, adding. Okay, and then you would control variable again. You would go to Barred Climbing, add variable D20. Okay, then you'd do the check, and for this 10 is really too low. But then again, if you're basing it off of Dungeons and Dragons, they wouldn't start with 10. They might only have like 1 or 2 in that, or you could base it off of a stat, which would be a bit more tricky. But again, it just depends on how you want to do it. If you want to do a stat check, you'd probably stat checks would be a little bit hard, because you get the bonus for every, I think, what is it? It starts at 12, you get +1, and then, or maybe it's at 10, you get +1 or something like that, or I can't remember. And then you can go up to 18 for a human, and then plus or minuses for different races. But anyway, so since we're giving him 10 there, what you'd probably want to do is increase this to, this is an easy check, so I mean, he's starting at 10. A D20, the average roll is probably going to be somewhere, between 10 would be dead center, but it's not necessarily where you're going to hit an average, so we don't necessarily want to check a 20. So let's say an 18. That means he only needs to get an 8 on this die roll here. So then you would do the check, and then control variable, you just reverse this and subtract it. So we can go ahead and test that. Actually, we need to add something else in there if we're going to do something like that. We probably should do this anyway, and just say and if you don't want them to be able to make the check again, like would be in a tabletop game, you could simply have a self switch and go to self switch a new event page, and then have it just have a message, you weren't able to climb this. And then that's just that. I mean, for a tabletop game, that's fine because usually once an event has passed, you're not going to have any more chances at it, and you might and be able to do a check again. That's up to the game master that's running the game. But for a video game, if it's something like climbing, and they will be coming back through at another time, or maybe it's just a really close die roll or something, you could allow them to try several times, or just try as much as they want. That kind of takes the D20, that it kind of makes it a bit of a cheat, because they can just keep trying until they get a roll that they like that way. But then it also means that if they increase the stat later and they come back, they still wouldn't be able to climb it, even if they've substantially increased the skill level. So it could be one of those things that maybe you do the self-switch thing to start with, and you'd like this, self-switch A, new event page, self-switch A turned on, text. You were unable to climb this. And then maybe later, yeah. So let's say they can come through that same area in the game again, maybe 3 or 4 more hours into gameplay, 20 hours into gameplay. It depends on the size of your game, how long it is. You could have a switch that, instead of using a self switch, because you can't manipulate self switches for individual events outside of them. Actually, I think one of Yanfly's plugins allows you to do that, but natively, I don't think you can. So you'd use a regular switch and turn that on, and then you could just turn it off for when they would be coming back through. So if they have leveled up that skill, they can try again. And if they fail again, well, then sorry, you're not good enough at climbing to climb the rope. It's gym class all over again. Sir, I believe that should work. So doing it this way, you'd actually be able to sometimes get away with doing stuff even without learning. So let's try it. You cannot climb this. And I forgot to make it. Same as characters. And just for the sake of speeding this up, let's go ahead and control switches and just make a climbing switch so we can go back and forth and test this bit. Right. So instead of self switch, we use climbing. Except this, we want to turn it off rather than on. There we go. So it'd be unlikely to just get a... Not impossible, but it'd be hard. So let's actually make this a bit harder, just so we can make sure we don't... We need 21, basically, for this skill check. And the reason why you'd want to use some sort of a system like this is the same as in a tabletop RPG. It adds some randomness. Cannot climb this. You cannot climb this. You cannot climb this. Did I not turn that switch on? No, I kept that. Cancel. Delete that. Control switches. No. That one. That one, that one, that one. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Alright. You cannot climb this. You weren't able to climb this. Then we go out. Oh! We go back in. And we should... Yes, I want to learn how to climb. 10. No. We are able to climb it. So we know that we got our skill up to over 21 with that die roll. So let's check. It's still at 10. No. Now, the other thing here that I just thought of, because we were able to get over a roll of an 11 both times there, you'd probably want to go ahead and make 2 pages. Now that I'm thinking about it, and what you'd want to do is just go ahead and copy this there, self switch A, and turn self switch A on. So that way they don't have to make a check every time, because it would have been possible to fail it the second time. That would be annoying. For the most part, for this sort of a check, you would never hide anything that they have to be able to do behind a skill check like this. This should always be optional stuff. Treasure, anything that they can search through to find items, goodies, treasure, basically, treasure by any other name is still treasure. It should always be optional. It's something that, okay, where do I want to spend my skill points this level? Do I want to be able to climb more stuff? Do I want to be able to have better awareness? Do I want to be able to talk to people better? If you're going to use a lot of these different types of passive skills, and you're going to make them choose where they put their points, there's 2 things you got to do. One, it has to be optional, because you should never force them to spec into any direction. If you're going to do that, then you might as well not make it a skill at all. If they have to do it to complete the game, don't make it a skill-based thing. It should just be something they can do. And it needs to be worth their while. So if you make the game and you put in social skills and I keep wanting to say active, but activity skills would be a way to put it as well. You're going to put both in. Both need to be useful. If you only have like 10 times in the entire game where the social ones matter and do anything useful, people aren't going to spec into the social skills. There's not a point. Same thing for the activity skills. If you only have like 10 events in the entire game where climbing is useful and is worth doing, well, then people are going to not use it. Unless it's a really short game. But if you're going to make a short game, you don't really need all those skills, honestly. I'm talking, this is the sort of stuff you would want to do for a bigger, longer, more epic game. And you're wanting to provide a variety of content and options for players. And, replay value. A lot of this stuff is about replay value, because if you make it to where they can only open up certain quests and therefore certain stories, because good quests, side quests, should have a story with them, in my opinion. If you want to open up that stuff, you have to spec into the social skills. If you want to be able to get to certain goodies and possibly open up other quests. Again, as long as it's something optional that they don't have to do, it's fine to hide it behind a skill wall, if you want to put it that way. Or not hide it, but prevent them from doing it unless they've spec'd into that skill. That's fine, as long as it's not something they have to be able to do to complete the game. Because then it should be, it's not an option anymore. If you're allowing them to choose what skills they spec into, and then you say, but you have to do this one, it's not an option anymore. Don't do that. But yeah, any side quests are fine. Hiding them behind a skill, or making them skill dependent on being able to do certain side quests, finding certain treasure, any stuff that's optional. That's fine. Anything that's optional. And yeah, So again, it adds replay value. It adds more dynamics to the game. It makes it more interesting to play. It gives the player a feeling of having, you're allowing them to make choices that actually matter in the course of the gameplay. Not to the main story, not to finishing the game, obviously, but then you provide that through options that affect the outcome. And that's where you can get into the alignment systems, forcing them. Well, forcing has a negative feeling to it. Condentation is the word. Condentation is a condensation. Condentation. There's words that sound similar, and in my head I keep going, which is the right one for this context? Condensation. This thing's anyway off of the weird thought there. So yeah, it adds replay value, and then you give them options on how the game will finish. Like I said, alignment systems, moral choices if you want to go there. Simply different paths that they can take through the game to reach possible, different conclusions. The downside of doing that is that it adds more work. Adding in skills means you have to add in stuff for those skills to do and interact, and give the player a reason to want to use them. Additional endings means you have to put in all the different choices that they can make through the game. Same for alignment systems. In order to make an alignment system matter, you have to put in all the extra options, all the different dialogue trees that it affects, all the different choices that it affects, different quests that are available or unavailable depending on their alignment. You can use factions for the same thing, which is usually you can use this sliding thing on to get faction alignment, not alignment, but reputation with a faction. Exact same process as doing alignments or sanity or anything. Exact same thing. It's all just a variable check in RPG Maker, and you would do the exact same thing for any game software. Any software, whether you're doing it from scratch with Unity, doesn't matter. It's simply a matter of using the exact same principle with the software, with the way that software does it. But generally speaking, it's always going to be a database check on a certain number. Is it high enough to meet the requirement to do the thing that you want it to do? Or if you're giving the player options with the skills and alignment and giving them choices to make, all that stuff, where are they, what path are they weaving through this game landscape that you've created? To do different paths in a game where they can get completely different endings, possibly experience different stories, you have to make both stories. So you're kind of, at that point, if you're just doing a fork in the road sort of thing, you basically have to make 2 games at that point. 1 for each path. And that's completely fine. Yeah, like I said, it's just the draft. My brain does not want to function with my mouth today. But if you want to add in that much more content, you have to make the content. It adds more workload. And if you're fine making the work, or doing the work and making it, then do it. If it fits the game. Because my other thing that I always like to say in my book, and I'll say it here, do what serves the game. That's what I was talking about earlier with the so-called ambiguous endings. Are you doing that for yourself or because it fits? Are you stroking your own ego, jerking mental masturbation, jerking yourself off, trying to feel like you're all clever? Or are you actually doing it because you think it serves the story somehow? Now, again, to me, I don't really care how the story ends. I just want a definitive ending. And the only way you can get that is to have them tell you what the ending is. To have an ending. Because it's their story. Anything else is speculation. which again is a form of mental masturbation. Game theory, theorizing, any kind of fiction theorizing, movie theories, all that stuff is just mental masturbation. Because the only person who can actually tell you what happens is the person who created it. It's their thing. It's their creation. They're the only one who knows. Definitively. But anyway, what I'm saying here is that, like I said, are you trying to do it for yourself, for your own glorification or whatever, or are you doing it because it actually helps the game somehow? And again, just because some people like it, a lot of people don't. A lot of people want a definitive ending. Because, and again, the people who like that sort of thing always try to make it about, again, they want to stroke their own egos. Oh, you're too stupid. You don't have an imagination. No, it's just not my job. I don't care. Again, for most people, that's all it is. It's like, I don't want to think about it. I don't play games. I don't watch movies to think about them. They're supposed to be experiences. If you're thinking about it, you're not experiencing it. That's not what they're supposed to be for. Most people who don't like, or want some sort of definitive finish, a resolution, that's where they're coming from. It isn't stupidity. It isn't a lack of imagination. It's just that they want an answer from the people who made it because they're the only ones who can actually give you a real answer. And they don't want to be trying to think about crap when they're wanting to watch a movie or play a game. If you're going to philosophize about something, then you do that on your own time. If you're playing a game, you're trying to have some fun. That's what they're for. If you're watching a movie, you want to be entertained. You want to go on a journey. You want to have an experience. Same for games. You want to go on a journey. You want to have some sort of an experience that you can't get from real life. Or, I don't know, for some reason, some people will play games that are like their real life job for some reason. That I don't understand. It's a bit silly to me, but, that's all it is. So, that's back to the original point there. Going off on a weird tangent, but like I said, is it serving the game? Is it making the game better? Or are you really just doing it to make yourself feel clever? And if you're going to do something to appeal to a certain audience, is it really worth it? To me, do what serves the game. You have to make yourself happy. Yes, I also firmly believe that because you're the one who spends the most time with your work, you have to make yourself happy. Don't do anything for fans. Don't do anything. Well, that sounds rude, but what I'm saying is don't do it just to serve them. Okay? It has to serve you and the game. But at the same time, trying to make yourself happy, if you're doing that, but at the expense of the game too, or at the expense of the game rather, not any two involved there. If you're doing it something at the expense of the game just to stroke your own ego, then you're not doing it right. You have to make yourself happy, but you also have to do what serves the game. You have to think about the audience and keep the audience in mind at all times while making games. But you also don't want to cater to them or pander to them. Yeah, don't do something that's going to make you uncomfortable or unhappy, something that you don't want to spend time working on just because you think the audience wants it. Or even if they've asked for it, necessarily. If you don't mind doing something that they've asked for, that's fine. Absolutely fine. But don't feel like you're obligated. Okay? You are the creator. You are the originator. You are the person who makes it. You are going to spend more time with the thing you're working on than anyone else. often by factor of hundreds of hours. Okay, that may sound crazy, but I mean, seriously, making a game, writing a book, making a movie, it takes a lot of work. Especially if you're an indie game developer. I mean, the thing about writing a book, I mean, all you need is the most basic computer with a keyboard that you can write. But making a game, I mean, even with low impact software like RPG Maker MV, which will run on most fairly new computers just fine, you still need assets, and it takes a lot of time. Writing a book can take a lot of time. Or you could, if you get a real super duper spark of inspiration, you could write a whole book in a weekend. Depends on how fast you are. Or a couple of weeks or something. Again, it just depends. Making a game takes a lot of time. And you have to have assets. You have to have music. Yeah, graphic assets. Assets covers everything that goes into making the game except for the programming. That's the software. But you need graphics. You need music. You got to create characters, and you have to write all the dialogue, and you have to try to give every single character that's going to speak a lot their own voice. So you have to do character development like a book, but then you also have to give them visual representations within the game, and then you got to do, most games are going to have some form of combat. So you have to do the combat, and you have to balance it all out, and you have to figure out all your skills, and then usually there's going to be some form of animation for them. So you have to have animation. I mean, if you're using something like Unity, you have to have 3D assets. You have to have the 3D environments, and you have to have the skins for them. And you're going to have physics engines, for jumping and shooting, anything that you're going to do. Games take a lot of work, and they require a lot of different things to come together to make them work. And if you're an indie game developer working by yourself or even with a small team, that is a lot of time that you're going to be spending on your game. A player, even if they play it several times, if they do several playthroughs, will never spend as much time with your game as you do. So, at the end of the day, all this philosophizing, it's just my view. Some of it, I think, actually is just the correct way to look at it. And a lot of the other things that people believe, it's just, ego stroking and mental masturbation. But the thing is, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem with that, honestly, as long as you're not getting pretentious about it. Don't say to me you don't have an imagination or you just don't want to use your brain, because I don't want to sit around and think about movies. I just want an ending, and then I can get on with my life. Go fuck yourself, you pretentious little prick. Okay? Just because you enjoy thinking about movies doesn't mean I have to. It's still just a fucking movie. Okay? You're not actually accomplishing anything. You're just sitting around thinking about a movie. So don't get an attitude with me over it or try to make a value judgment about me. If you enjoy it, it's fun for you, you're entertained, go ahead, that's fine. I don't care. But don't get an attitude or, try and act like there's something wrong with me just because you have to, have some sort of ego investment in something you do as entertainment. Being pretentious. Like I said, go fuck yourself. Don't do it. So yeah, if you want to do games like that, if you enjoy making games like that, and you want to make games because you enjoy it, and other people will enjoy it, and that's all it is. It's enjoyment. You're entertained by it. You want to make an ambiguous ending or uncertain ending or whatever for fun because you enjoy that sort of thing. That's fine. Do what you do. Do yourself. Do you. Have fun. Do your own thing. Enjoy your creative process. That's fine. All I'm saying is don't be a dick about it. That's where I'm coming from. I personally don't like it. I don't do it with my games. If you like it, if you want to do it, go ahead. Just don't be a dick. Okay? I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm not trying to tell you how to make a game. Well, I am telling you how to do stuff, but not how to make it. You know, that should make sense. Just think about it. So yeah, all the philosophizing, take it with a grain of salt, as long as you're not trying to be a prick over something that at the end of the day is just entertainment. Okay? And like I said, make sure you're doing it because it serves the game and not just serves your ego. Anything you're going to do in a game, don't do it because you think the audience wants it. Don't do it because it strokes your ego and makes you feel clever. It's the same stuff with like the symbols and themes and trying to have deep meanings with the bunny ears there, the air quotes. Don't do it because you think people want it or because you're trying to feel clever. Do it because it fits. Do it because it makes sense. Do it because it serves the game. Okay? And make sure that it's coming from something honest. Again, that it's coming from you, honestly. That you're not doing it, like I said, just to try to feel clever, just because you want the audience to feel like you're clever. Do it because it is good, a good thing to do. Because, you know, it's kind of like Oscar bait movies. People still fall for that crap a lot, but you know, I think people a lot of times can still tell when something isn't coming from a genuine place. And you know, be genuine, be yourself, as long as you're not being a dick. You know, some game developers like making torturous games that fuck with their players and are dickish to the players. If that's what you want to do, I won't play your game, but whatever. So yeah, that's that's how you do all those different things I was showing you, and some philosophizing on game development and being a good person on top of it. That wraps this up. Thanks very much for watching. I will see everybody on the next one. And if you're watching this on YouTube after the stream is over, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell, share the video, leave a comment, all the good YouTube junk. It's always appreciated. I really do appreciate it. I just don't like asking people to do it. For some reason. I mean, it's just one of those things you kind of need to do on YouTube videos, but I don't like doing it. I don't care if other people do it, but I don't like doing it. I don't know why. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.